everyone, and welcome back to what I can only hope was the very hotly anticipated, despite how long it's been delayed, episode 2 of the one and only StormWatch. This is the hopefully eventually one-stop shop for all of your Stormgate related news, etc. Anticipation, theory crafting, etc. Otherwise known as one uneducated StarCraft players, just rambling. Hopefully it will eventually become more than just me, because I want to get a range of different people talking. Most of us are going to be on the lower end of RTS, let's be real. But you never know what's going to happen in the future. And today, as I promised last time, we are not going to be staring at this splash art the entire time. We are instead going to be watching some of the gameplay from the not E3, what do they call it? The PC Games Show? Which is, of course, the reason why I'm not using the face cam today. I thought that you'd all get distracted by my dashingly good looks, he says hesitantly. Yes, I got rid of the face cam. It's just going to get in the way of the screen. I'm going to end up trying to point on something on my screen and have that be behind the camera, and you're not going to see anything. So, with that out of the way, I guess I'm going to head over to it. I have watched through this gameplay trailer. I have not watched anyone else's view of it. So, not this screen. I'll cover over that. And not this one. Yes, here we go. This intense gameplay footage. I am, of course, kidding. I just couldn't help myself. I look forward to the recurring chicken gag. Is there not even any sound on this video? There's not even any sound on that video. Anyway, over to what we are actually here to watch. Get our standard logo. Yep. Just normal logo stuff. Now, get our initial view. It is pretty standard. Obviously, we can see some health bars here. This does not appear to be a healer. It's some other form of caster, because, well, it's a lot of low mechs. Or maybe it could be that they only heal like the biological soldier units, and then these are all mechs that either can't heal or we're going to have some repairing. Up here we've got our siege tank, which it does a fair bit. And as you can see, these units are taking a considerable period to die. I do have thoughts on this. I think it's not terrible. And here we can see this seems to be some sort of... Oh, those might be the scout dogs. I initially thought that was that might be a creep, but I think those are the scout dogs. Someone's gone mass scouts to attack. And here we have a good old zealot bomb onto the siege tanks. They did take friendly fire. Good to know that. I wasn't 100% sure on that.
Hi guys, this is TLO. Obviously played RTS my entire life, so it's been a real privilege for me to be one of the first people to try out Stormgate. Really stoked about this match against Kevin. Think I'm gonna do some light harass in the early game and then just try to overwhelm him with a massive amount of macro.
Yep, and so obviously we're seeing a trial game here between TLO and Monk, who was one of the very senior designers on Kevin Dong. He's, I believe, their head. In Magic the Gathering terms, I think it would be sort of head of development in terms of, he's sort of the idea of how does this actually work in practice and how does that balance out. My understanding is more or less how it works, and most of you know who TLO is. TLO is one of the most famous StarCraft 2 players, especially in the early days. He was big StarCraft 1, obviously, as pretty much all of the early StarCraft 2 players were, especially the Western ones. And obviously he's basically retired from gaming now. I believe he's working behind the scenes at one of the teams. I don't remember which one. I have a feeling it might be Team Liquid, but I could easily be wrong. And obviously he's the one playing Monk in this game. So just quickly looking at what we see in this base here. So this is the Resistance faction. My understanding, at least, is this is the one that's going to be most familiar to everyone who's played an RTS game. They're the Age of Empires 2 faction. They're the Terran. We're gonna know roughly how they work. And also, they seem to be going for a little bit of a cross between a Warcraft 3 Goldmine and StarCraft 2 Mineral Patches, is what I'm guessing. And I'm guessing this is going to work similar to a Vespene Geyser. I'm guessing you're going to possibly have to build something on that. Hard to say. But yeah, so it's multiple workers combine off the one thing, but there is only one thing. And obviously the command center, I'm going to assume, has to be a certain distance away. Guessing that's a supply depot of some description. That would be my guess. Probably a barracks. I think this worker is about to put down a factory.
And then just try to overwhelm him with a massive amount of macro.
And yes, obviously we can see we have a mini map here. That's not finished. That's not quite filling up the screen. I'm gonna guess that that'll look a little bit better on release. All of this will look better on release. Is a very, very important thing to remember. All of these buttons are very much work in progress. I don't think the supply icon will be a literal loaf of bread. I do love that, but it's hilarious. Let's see, we've got a game timer here. All that usual RTS stuff. Sound not too bad. I think it needs a bit more. I don't think it's finished. It's not bad. You see a scout running into the base. Scouts will fight each other. They do appear to have a slow, which is interesting. And as we can see, there is a repair. So the mechanical dog will get repaired.
Hi, my name is Kevin Monk Dong, and I work on gameplay and balance on Stormgate. Today, I'll be trying a fast expansion build, and then I'll try to tech to higher tier units to defend whatever TLO throws at me.
This tree here, I think, is very interesting. So yeah, they cut down 4 minutes here. So it looks like currently, the way things stand, that's roughly the force you can get out to your opponent's side of the map at 5 minutes, which, to me, feels a little bit more Wings of Liberty than than current StarCraft 2. Maybe more Warcraft or Brood War style of just, you can't quite get things out as quickly in the early game, which is personally something I like. I think Legacy of the Void is just a bit too bang in your face, and it means that not too much happens early on, but it means that the difference between like a really, really aggressive cheese and an economic play is a lot larger, which some people hate because it means, oh, I didn't scout it, I lose. But I actually prefer it because it's much more, okay, I held his cheese. That means he's really far behind, and you can't just transition out of these really early game plays the way that you could previously. Obviously, this is real early, probably too much to read into it at this point. However, as we can see, a lot of these were taking a lot of damage from all of this. And the other interesting thing as well is it did seem as if it took the the Age of Empires 2. Not sure if it was in Warcraft 3 or not, but the ability to send multiple workers to build a building to build it faster, which is probably a good thing. I think that's a useful feature to have in a game. Probably will be a resistance only. And I'm just looking at these icons in the bottom left. Is that a liftoff icon? Yeah, definitely not command center. I will be calling that a command center for all of time. That could be a liftoff. I'm guessing that's some sort of rally that might be cancelled. That's obviously worker and an ability of some description. As the workers don't take huge amounts of damage, and the turret doesn't deal incredible amounts either. As you can see, these mechs. Let me just go back to when they first. You can actually see it takes a second to start firing, but once he does start firing, there's a big sort of AOE, and that starts scything through. And so Kevin's got his opinions.
There, so I'm at a pretty bad economic disadvantage. I'm gonna have to try some really sneaky tactics. Maybe getting an upgrade TLO isn't familiar with. Perhaps.
Actually, one thing I want to point out as well is these, and this is a feature I really like, because I think obviously terrain is obviously going to play a lot more into this, because we saw these units were able to... Sorry, I might just mute this for a second. Those units were able to retreat back through these trees, but these larger mechs can't get through that forest.
Maybe even luckily creep jacking.
So let's just... As he is using these mechs. So they've also got a charge that has a stun, which is an interesting feature on a ranged unit. I suppose a ranged AoE unit, that actually makes a fair bit of sense, because you charge up and then, yeah, you can now attack through things. Creep's obviously playing a part in this game. The Viking chicken over here. We'll have to see exactly what those end up doing. Currently, it looks like they're giving resources, which, yeah, is not a bad way of doing it. And you can see a medic unit. Both sides jumping in and out of medevacs here to try and get some work done. These siege tanks, I do like them. I think it's a good way, sort of this moving projectile. I'm imagining it's going to have the ability to aim it more precisely for when you've got 5,000 APM to land it exactly where you want to. I do think the shots are a little bit too slow and a little bit too low down. You obviously didn't see any hit there. But I think they're a little bit too slow and a little bit too low down. Maybe the damage is okay, but I think they're a little bit too slow. They're a little bit too easy to dodge. But I like the concept, the idea you can fire them out and then you give your opponent a chance to avoid some of that AoE.
But this time we'll bring in a larger force from the left side as well. And I think I'll be able to out-micro him here. He has a more static mech army, I believe, and my bio unit should be able to touch.
So interestingly there as well, you saw that forest get cut down when I believe it was when he charged through it. I just want to double check that he didn't siege tank it down.
My unit should be able to touch all the tech shots.
Yeah, it was that did it. And here we're going to see what happens when you try to attack into a defensive position.
Get in there and have a pretty smooth path of attack here.
So yeah, obviously there you could see a lot of those units. The battle was a lot slower than a equivalent StarCraft 2 battle would be. If that was a StarCraft 2 battle, that would have taken half that time, if that. I am wondering if the damage is still... I think it's the attack speed more than the damage. I like the level the damage is at. I wonder if the attack speed could be a tiny bit faster. Battles might drag on a tiny bit. I could easily be wrong there. It's not... I'm not an expert, and it's not like it's, oh my god, it's so painfully slow. It isn't. And it's very possible that even a little bit faster would just be like, oh, cool, all of my stuff died immediately. And that would be bad. That would be bad, because there's nothing worse than looking away from your army for 2 seconds and then a bunch of banelings rolled in, or 2 disruptors fired their shots and your entire army is dead. No one has any fun in those situations. So, I do like it. I like a lot of it. I think those siege tanks, like I said, they're just a tiny bit too slow. Like, so yeah, just so we look at this tank here, fires in. So it does deal about half damage to the tanky melee. So I think the damage level is good. And, like, if you got 3 or 4 shots, like, on a big clump of units, that would be devastating. The odds of that happening, though, don't feel great. They don't feel great.
I have a pretty smooth path of tank shots.
Obviously, looking at these turrets, animation's not completed. It's just more funny than anything. I really enjoy this art. I think it's extremely clear what's happening, which is one of the biggest things that have happened in a RTS like this. It's so important you can tell exactly what's happening. And what everything is and where it's going. All of that stuff is brilliant. These turrets, I don't think that's a finished texture. Most of the buildings do look in pretty good shape, actually. I definitely have to say that I think I'm impressed with how good this looks. There's work to be done, and work will be done because we are at least a year away from launch, I expect. We're getting alphas coming soon, and betas hopefully not too long after that. But it looks pretty good. I really like the level of detail and everything. It's like, what is happening here? Obviously, you got all the health bars and everything showing up well. I'm guessing they put them on to damaged only for this, which is the traditional standard for all things. What do you call it? All things esports and broadcast related. Everyone puts them onto damaged only, which is reasonable. It shows what's injured without completely cluttering the screen at all times. Obviously, in a slower fight game like this, I think there's going to be, especially with the sorts of AoE that we have, watching it could get interesting as everything will have low health bars. But that's not the end of the world. I'm hoping that they have sort of the line breaks in these that you have in StarCraft, so that it's a little bit easier to tell how much health something has. But again, that's something that I think will come with time. And overall, I'm really liking the way that it looks like all of this is going to work. Looks like combat healing might not be quite so much of a thing. And yeah, that was a game. Let me just go back to, because I want to have a look at some of these fights, because they haven't shown off many units in this. We've seen this. Don't know the name of it, but it's the siege tank. We've got our, I believe they are called the Vulcan, these mechs, and I believe these are the med techs. Was how they worked. And then Lancers and Marines, something like that, is what these ones were. But you can see the idea. It's like, these guys at the front, they have to get to melee range, but they are fairly chunky and do decent damage once they get there. They'll probably work a lot like Zealots in practice. They might not have any sort of... I suspect they'll go for a movement speed upgrade or something at some point. I suspect Stimpack is not going to be part of this game, because much as I love it, it's probably the core problem with StarCraft 2. In some ways, is what Stimpack forces every other race to have. And then, as you can see here, yeah, you see that siege tank shot? Did about half damage to these two, a little bit less over here, so it might do more damage at the center. But nonetheless, I think that's probably a good amount of damage. They definitely deal enough damage. So attacking siege lines with static armies is going to be very difficult. I just wonder if that projectile moves a little, like, it's just a little bit too easy to dodge. But then again, at the same time, maybe the fact that you are dodging it allows the rest of your units to deal a little damage, and you can see how this goes, especially with everything moving a little bit slower, attack speed being a little bit slower and more relevant. And yeah, this fight continuing on the left. Still not quite sure what these guys are doing. One thing I will say. This is the classic, oh no, I only grabbed half of my army, I need to send the other half in. This is someone who's just having a troll game. I do enjoy the mass dog troll game. And I do enjoy that they have the minimum range as well. And I like this idea that like he built the wall. And then the dropship came over. Looks like the dropships don't have any special abilities at this point, which is probably a good thing. I think they're giving everybody except Zerg fun toys on their... Get off of Tilo's face. I think they're giving everything except for Zerg fun abilities on their dropships. Ended up being a mistake in StarCraft 2. It was a nice idea, but in practice, I think it didn't work out the way everyone wanted it to. And which is unfortunate, but that happens sometimes. I think the other thing we can see as well here is some of how the quick macro system, which they've talked about, will work. So I'm guessing sort of the idea, like, this might be buildings, basic units, advanced units, upgrades, advanced upgrades? I don't know exactly, but sort of simplifying macro system for newer players is something they've talked about. I think we can see the beginning of this. The system is probably going to get very much iterated on a lot over time. And looking at the minimap as well now, which I think probably should do, it does look like we can see a very expansion style system like we saw in StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, rather than a more open system like in Age of Empires or a territory control system like in Company of Heroes. I like that. Some people won't. I just thought it was important to show it, make sure everyone's on the same page. And I'm curious of going forward because I didn't look at it at the time. So this is the defense. They're not showing the mini-map here. I'm trying to work out what part of the map this might be happening on. I have a feeling it's somewhere along here. It might be either this icon or this icon. That looks... Hearts usually means healing in video games, so I'm going to say that's some sort of healing for your units, and that maybe vision? That could be an interesting way of doing... Interesting use for creeps as well, actually. If you gain some sort of watchtower, something like a Zelnaga watchtower for a couple of minutes. Could be a fun thing to do. And... Yes. Yeah, so to give you vision, that's another way you can encourage people out on the map, because as anyone who's played with or played as or against Zerg knows, there is nothing more broken in a strategy game than vision. As anyone who's played against Zerg can attest, trying to move across the map is painful sometimes, as they just know exactly where you are at all times. And then... I think these workers might be a little bit tanky. Although, again, that could just be my personal preference. And that... Oh, I wonder if the command center ability... Let's go back to a point where the command center is selected. I wonder if that's either probably a defensive, but potentially an aggressive upgrade for workers. Yeah, I suspect that's something along the lines of defense matrix. Whether it only affects workers or not, I don't know. But that's an interesting way, because the command center clearly has energy. You can see it here. You can see it here. The bar and the numbers don't quite match, but that's probably just an alpha thing, or like a pre-alpha thing. That I don't think that'll be relevant to anybody when they get their hands on the game.
First people to try out Stormgate. Really stoked about this match against.
And Yes, it is. It is interesting. Like I said, we can see buildings going down. I was curious. Did we? Okay, so he selected his workers in order to build the buildings. But my understanding is that that's something that wouldn't necessarily be necessary. You'd just be able to click the icon here, press Q, do the advanced users, and just go from there. Let me skip forward to the attack again. Dog gets obliterated. That's yeah, that should happen when that many stuff comes in. Yeah, all the workers stack up on this. Start taking damage. And so we can see the strength. We definitely can see the strength of Defender's advantage here. Because obviously he had literally nothing when this attack came in, and he did manage to push it back, kind of. I wouldn't exactly call that a great defense. And here we can see I want to, like, this has to be some sort of upgrade building, right? And then I'm thinking this is the flying unit building, just because green seems to be the hovering stuff for the resistance. I still don't know what this is, but I love just the rack of the rocket launchers out the front. Maybe you build siege tanks out of that. And I'm just curious over here. Can't really tell, but I think those workers just sit in that to mine the resources from it, which is interesting. And obviously, yeah, he tried to take advantage while he was stacking the creeps. That's a very Warcraft 3 strategy. I think they call it creep jacking or something like that. I think I heard Monk say. Where you just try to attack your enemy when they're taking out the neutral creeps in the middle of the map. Yeah, we can see, so dropships working the way I expect them to. Marines can shoot up. The siege tank does deal a lot of damage, but is fairly squishy. Although that is like 10 Marines shooting at it, so doesn't matter how slow you make your game. Yeah, one unit should die to like 15, especially when it's a big static siege unit. So that all looks the way it's supposed to, I think. And then this one clears the forest. I think that's very interesting. Yeah, you see that again. They took a lot of damage to the center and a lot less towards the sides. So I'm guessing that the siege tank, the splash damage it just shows the entire area, but it's not like a disruptor where it deals all of the damage to that entire area. Which is probably a good thing. Still take a lot of damage in the center. There's something I love about the how unfinished the turrets are. They're just shooting out in between the two barrels. I'm gonna go with those are Gauss rails, and they're firing an extremely slow railgun shell. Because that might be even funnier. But yeah, you see the medic units here. So they are healing the Marines. Don't seem to be doing so incredibly quickly. They're not exactly StarCraft 1 medics. But overall, I think we've seen some very interesting stuff here. And I really like the look of it for where it's at in development. Like, obviously, say the other Infernal faction, for example, is obviously nowhere near this level. They haven't shown it to us for a reason. And the other thing I'm hoping as well is that one of the things I think is great about StarCraft 2 is each faction has macros uniquely. Warpgate, in practice, I think ended up causing too many limitations to be necessary to Protoss. In the gateway units are just not very good for the most part. But I love that they did it so that, you had Terran, they're your standard, build out of buildings, standard, everyone knows how Terran works, who's played an RTS game. Then you have Protoss, who are mostly pretty similar, but they've got this really unique warp gate mechanic that really allows them to put pressure around the map and constantly reinforce. And then you have Zerg. And Zerg just operate completely differently to, I think, anything in any RTS game. And I hope that there's something like that, where not only do the different factions have different units and micro differently as a result of that, but I really hope that the macro is unique for each of the factions. And I think if they can do that without making it too intense, like I think Zerg possibly was, then I think this game could be in an incredible place. So, I do believe that's everything for this one. Thank you all for watching. If you've made it this far, please like and subscribe, and I will try to remember to talk about that sort of thing earlier in the video, but we all know how that goes sometimes. Yeah, like I said, thank you all for watching. I do hope to get another episode of this. Now, originally, my plans for the next episode was to show the... was talk about the developers, the people behind it. Unfortunately, because I took so long to get this episode out, something else came up, and that was the Reddit AMA that they did. And there were some really interesting questions asked, some really interesting responses that I want to talk about a little bit. Obviously, a few nothing burgers in there as well, because that's how AMAs work. And quite a few, sorry, we can't talk about that. But I think there were some interesting things said there. Some of them talk about ideas I was pretty sure I had, but wasn't 100% sure on. And in that, as an addendum to that, wasn't sure if they'd been changed or if I just misheard in the first place. And get confirmation of that that I was on the right track, and that see where their head process is and what they think is important, and etc, etc, etc. Like I said, that will be next time. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Goodbye.